Hello YouTube, Millennium X17 here. It is time now to go over the results of the before and after for my upgrade on my computer for the upgrade I've done. I've gone from dual, essentially R9 280Xs to dual RX480s, the Nitro Plus OCs from Sapphire. And you know what? Here's the thing. We're using 3D Mark today. If you haven't seen the previous build video of that, it's the previous part in the playlist. Check it out. It explains my system the way it stands right now today. Honestly, nothing shocking is about to happen here. Everything you would expect two 280Xs to do versus two RX480s to do, which have been overclocked to 1342, is it? I think yes. Megahertz. Nothing shocking revelation here, but the data is interesting and it points to a very conclusive result showing me what I should be upgrading next if I care to go down that road, but it's also, we'll get there. It's an interesting thought process. Nonetheless, 3D Mark, CloudGate. I did CloudGate, Skydiver, Firestrike, and Firestrike Ultra. 4 tests before and after. Mostly the footage you're seeing is going to be of the afters. The only time is, I think, during Firestrike and Firestrike Ultra, I'll be going it up. My old cards had a real problem with, and I might even just throw in some quick footage of it during like the loading screens and sometimes during the tests themselves. My old cards, the two 280X, essentially it's a 7970 gigahertz edition with a 280 R9 280X that I've clocked 7970 gigahertz to the 280X. So it's, again, two 280Xs. They did not like 3D Mark at all. Like during the loading screens, it would jigger up and down and bounce and would have a seizure. So while these are valid results as the ending cards show, unfortunately, I don't think the old test results are 100% representative, given the fact that something weird was going on. I don't know what it was, and at the time, I didn't have really time to diagnose it. Obviously, it was something to do with the video cards themselves, though, because as soon as I threw in the new cards had no problem with 3D Mark at all. So, nonetheless, CloudGate before score 17,113, after 18,588. Again, okay, it definitely was better, but it shocked me that it wasn't more of a result. And this is where a pattern starts to develop. The graphics score before was 53,048. After score is 77,378. Okay, that is a bigger result. That is a pretty big buffer. Graphic test 1, 231 frames per second. Graphic test 2, 229 frames per second. Before after is 271 and 441. Okay, so the graphics, big, huge gap there. Physics score before was a 5,077. After, 5,080. Before was a 16.22. After is a 16.14. I think 13. I kind of scribbled, dotted that one down. But again, physics score stayed the same. There's no combined score for CloudGate. But again, interesting result. Again, nobody should be shocked the fact that the frame rate, you know, the graphics test 2, 229.79 to 441.67. Obviously, the dual 4x80s, 4x80s, did I say? It's RX480s. I'm retarded, so you're just going to have to deal with that fact. Obviously did way better. Way better. But the physics scores stay the same. And this is going to stay consistent through all these tests. Skydiver. Before score was a 17,433. After is a 24,815. Definitely a bigger improvement. A little bit harder test to run. Graphics score before was a 24,975. After is 56,966. Definitely, that's more than double. So, yeah, again, huge upgrade, nothing shocking. Frame rate, same story. 112.72 for the G1. G2 is 255.22 for frames per second. Well more than twice the frame rate, and same story for graphics test 2, 115.4 to 265.22. Again, the same story is shown by the physics score. 7,410 and 7,444. So only a little margin. I think the plus or minus, I would think that would be well within reasonable margin of error. Anyways, and again, the combined score 14,110 to 14,325. Frames per second, roughly the same, only about a frame apart at 58.07 and 58.95. So the picture that I'm getting here is my CPU is what handles the physics, and it's obviously what's bottlenecking everything. That's what I'm getting. Moving on to Firestrike, and this is where the old cards really start to not like 3D Mark at all. Firestrike Vanilla, if you will, is still not easy to do. And my old setup managed a 6,810 on the score to the new score of 11,223. Again, nothing groundbreaking. I'm not exactly setting any records with this computer. That's not the point. We'll get to the point later on after the fact, my wrap-up thoughts to this part, but graphics score 8,481 for the old. The new, the after test is 22,586. That is a huge jump. Huge margin. And the frame rate shows the same things. Graphics S1 and 2 frame rate for before is 38.85 and 35.110 to a 94.29 to a 102.45 after. And that is a huge upgrade. Obviously, the cards are what we switched out, so that was what you should expect to see. Same story with the physics score, 7,366 to 23 frames per second, 7,361 to 23 frames per second. It's actually a little bit dip in the after. Maybe the CPU is getting a little heavy, and that's the other thing. These tests happen, it's like, the before test happened at like, I don't know, 1 a.m. in the morning, and these after tests happened at 11 o'clock at night that same day. So it was, I think it was the 20th? Yeah, I think it was the 20th that I did this, of December. And so it's like, but by this time, all the parts are warming up. Maybe they're getting a little tired at this point in time. Obviously, the same story comes through with the combined test. The combined score, 26.29 before at 12.23. The old carts really did not like this. However, the combined test, after, I expected it to do a lot better. It didn't. Again, the CPU is the limiting factor, I think, in this, and it's painting a very clear picture. 2,816, 13.1 frames per second. Not a huge jump, as I would expect to see. Obviously, I think at this point in time, it's clear to say that the CPU is the next thing that should get upgraded. Well, I'll think about that. Well, the problem with that is the next one up are the water-cooled ones with those. I don't know how long those tubes are. I don't know where I would be mounting it in my case. It's a little bit of an X factor, but I digress. Nonetheless, yeah, Firestrike, I liked it a lot. Now, Firestrike Ultra, I'm going to have to show this. This is the before testing now for Firestrike Ultra. It's probably the worst showing of Firestrike Ultra that you will ever see. The two R9 280Xs essentially really did not like Firestrike Ultra. The score was 2009. Yep. The after score, not a whole lot better, 4,780. Graphics score of 2017 for before, after 5,207. It's a really tough test. So there's that. Frames per second, again, G1, G2 before 9.76 and 7.97. Ooh, it really didn't like it. It was a slideshow. Again, definitely the worst showing of Firestrike Ultra you probably have ever seen. Again, I don't do 3D Mark all that often. You know, I don't do this professionally, so it's just my computer. It upgraded. And again, the upgrade shows after the dual RX480s, G1, G2, 28.85, 18.63. Again, nothing stellar, but it ran it. It was stressing hard. And again, in my previous part, I showed how the trick software says that the fans on my cards failed. But yet during this test, they didn't exceed 70 degrees Celsius. And they're functioning. They're working. It's weird. I can even bring over Afterburner and show that the history curve on the temperature, it's fine. Again, so it's a little bit weird. But nonetheless, combined score 951 before and 4.42 frames per second. Yeah, slideshow for the win. 2230 after the fact, 10.37, not a whole lot better, still kind of a slideshow. Firestrike Ultra is a hard test, I'll say. Sorry, little addendum to this whole spiel that I just came to my attention, as a matter of fact. See, when I was doing the graphics testing, at the end of each set, I would hit print screen and then paste it to a paint program and then just save it, and that way you'd have a nice big splash screen to see the after effect. Well, unfortunately, I wasn't smart enough to do that for the end of Firestrike before, so sorry, you're gonna have to deal with blurry camera footage as a. You can still see it's a valid score. You can still kind of make out the numbers, sort of, but unfortunately, it's not the best. I do need to upgrade my camera ultimately. Anyway, sorry about that. Moving on. At the end of the day, what I will say for 3D Mark is a good test to run to show if for improvements in an apples to apples comparison. Now, obviously, my system to yours will be completely different. I do not do this professionally. I just did this as I have the program, therefore I used it to show a before and after when I upgraded something, and the upgrades show every graphics test score, every frame rate score is more than doubled. I think. I'm pretty sure more than doubled on some of them, tripled even. So the cards are doing more with less power at the same time, which is also pretty good. And at the end of the day, you know, the CPU is the limiting factor when it comes to 3D Mark. But here's the thing that I'll say about 3D Mark. Nothing against the program. It's great for what it does. At the end of the day, however, I find that 3D Mark is in its own kind of sphere of its own little world, and not to say that's a bad thing. It's perfectly fine for seeing if your computer is super fast at doing those specific tests. However, in the real world of playing video games, are you really going to run into that much physics happening all at the same time where, you know, columns are falling down and smoke and sparks and swords are flying during Firestrike combined tests? It's like, is that really going to happen in a real video game? Whereas, you know, during an average gameplay session, not to say that certain games can't get crazy, but looking at the whole spectrum of things, is it really going to happen like that? And I don't really think so. So for that aspect, I say, even though my CPU is the limiting factor when it comes to the physics computations that 3D Mark does, I don't say it's entirely a bad thing that, oh no, my computer, it can't run games. Here's the thing, Firestrike Ultra is 4K, isn't it? And Firestrike is 1080, I believe. Don't quote me on that, I don't honestly know. But here's the thing, I never really cared about 4K to begin with. Again, so a lot of people's first reaction would be, then why did you buy these cards? They say they're optimized for 4K somewhere on here. Like, it's right there, right there. 4K gaming, it says right on the back of the box. And it probably says on other parts of the box as well. You know, it's like, oh no, these are for 4K. You know, can they do 4K? Yes, I honestly think that, you know, they did a solid 30 frames per second on Firestrike Ultra, maybe a smidge under. Again, during average gameplay, could they? Probably. I would say they probably could do 4K. Here's the problem part, and it's a part that nobody really takes into consideration. I don't have a 4K monitor, so why should I even bother doing anything at 4K? They're pretty good. You know, at the end of the day, when you're looking at real-world statistics, this card dominated Firestrike at a really solid 90-plus frame rates. You know, exceeding 90 frames a second on, I think, is it both tests here? Yeah, 94.29 and 102.45 is what Firestrike Vanilla ended up graphics tests 1 and 2 on the frame count. So, they're solid at 1080p, and that's all I really care about, because as many people that think they know a difference between 720 and 1080, there's even less of a difference between 1080 and 4K. You know, like, again, if all you're looking at is the finite lines and that, you're not actually playing the game, and at that point in time you're doing an entirely different thing. Let's say that it's a bad thing. If that's your thing, great. I don't care about that. I play games. Therefore, to be solid at 1080 is all I care about. And guess what? These cards are going to be more than good for that. That's the end of this part, overlooking the data for 3D Mark. The next set, I go over a weird bunch of games. It's pretty much what I have on hand at the time of doing these tests. I don't do this professionally, obviously, so the games that I have available to me are not the standard usual set. And again, I'm just doing a before and after for my own set, you know, for my own things of the games that I have on hand. So it works for me. It might not work for you. It'll give you a slight idea. It won't radically change your idea to, oh no, I need to go get two RX480s. You know, maybe this does, maybe it doesn't. But again, the games I choose aren't the usual going affair. It's just sort of like Rise of the Tomb Raider, Hitman. I've seen a couple others. I don't have those games, so I can't test those games. Therefore, I test the games that I have on my hand, and that is what we're going to be doing next. So, until next time, you guys have yourselves a good day.